We talked about the disadvantage to the men and boys, but whenever this discussion comes up in media or anywhere, it's always a counter argument that even though there is a disadvantage at the bottom, the men dominate at top. Political power, boardrooms, and you were there in the boardrooms, you are in the boardrooms. How do you square this asymmetry between power at lower levels and at higher levels?
Well, just because you have a male prime minister doesn't mean that men are lording it over. I mean, that's not the case with Anthony Albanese. You know, it's not like he's funding men's health or changing the law to suit boys and men. It's actually the opposite. In the last 3.5 years, the law's been changed and funding has been changed to help women predominantly. You know, there was an analysis by the Australian Men's Health Forum that looked at the first 4 budgets of Anthony Albanese's Labor government. And what it found was, of new announcements of health funding, there was 60 times more that went to women's health than to men's health. So just because you have a male prime minister or a male health minister or a male secretary of the health department, that does not mean that men are exercising power to the detriment of women. And, you know, I think this is a fundamental misunderstanding. It's a fundamental myth about patriarchy. You know, you can have a man in the head of government or as a king, or you can have male cabinets, but they were providing safety and stability for women and for children and for families and for quality of life. And through all of that time, this is the case in the West and around the world, all societies have been marked by male disposability. You know, the working class men and the soldiers and the security, I mean, the men in the risky jobs, they're not privileged. They've been literally putting their bodies and their lives on the line for their families and their communities. So I think there is a fundamental myth there, and I think it's been extremely powerful, but it's not really accurate or balanced. So I think we need to challenge the narratives that have led to where we are now, and that's, you know, something that I dealt with in my first book, The Relentless War on Masculinity. You know, I really go back and I do question and challenge those myths. For example, I'll give you another example, which is the case throughout humanity. Based on DNA evidence, twice as many women have had children as men. Yeah. And consistently through history, women have had longer lifespans. I mean, there have been times when the lifespans are pretty similar, but overall, women have had longer lifespans. So if you're going to judge a good life, you know, as a human, it's living longer and living to see your children. And twice as many females in humanity have had that. They've had the privilege of longer lives. They've had offspring, progeny, whereas quite a large minority of males did not have that. They did not live to see children, and they were, well, putting their bodies, you know, on the line to do arduous, risky work, and sometimes losing their lives because of that. So I don't really accept the framing of the question. For example, in Australia at the moment, the cabinet has a small majority of women. So, you know, I think there's an interesting situation of, okay, are you going to push the education system to be even more unfavourable to boys and young men? I mean, like I said, there are already 164 female graduates for every 100 male graduates. Do you want to push it to 200 female graduates for every 100 male graduates? Is that what you're trying to do? I think we need a more granular, richer, honest assessment, not just the talking points of second wave feminism or intersectional feminism or, you know, a social media post or comment. We need something that's a lot bigger and more inclusive than that.